Hi, this is tkviper, and we are going to look at a new product by INKEE, or INKEE in Cantonese. It is their latest gimbal for action cameras. It is called a Falcon. It's a 3-axis gimbal. And it is designed to work with popular action cameras like the GoPro series and the DJI Osmo Action. It's made of aluminum alloy, and you can scan the QR code there for more information. As you can see, it's very good for taking action videos on the move. Here are all the accessories. We'll take a look at each one carefully later on. It's produced in Guangdong, China, southern province in China. Alright, now let's open this up and check it out. With most newer action cameras, you have very good electronic stabilization built in. So why would you need this gimbal? Well, there are a few cases, and we'll talk about them later on in this video. Alright, it's nicely packaged. We have a plastic film here, gotta rip that off. And then, after a bit of shaking, the top comes off, just like this. It took a while though. Alright, let's take a look inside. We have a little card here that gives you instruction in Chinese and English on the other side. So this is how you would fit a Hero 9. And similarly for other action cameras. We got a bunch of buttons here. A mode button, a power button, and then we have a joystick. On the back we have a trigger. On the side we have a shoot button, a record button, and a time-lapse button. And those, I think, only work with the GoPros. Didn't work with my DJI Action. Here are all the accessories. We'll look at them in detail later. We got a warranty card, and that's about it. So let's take a look at everything inside. We have a bag here that contains little accessories. So let's just dump everything out. Here we have a USB Type-C charging cable. I'm very glad they didn't go with the micro USB cable. 2 hex wrenches to adjust the gimbal to fit a variety of cameras, and 2 bolts to hold down the camera. We have one that you can screw on with your hand, the other one you need the hex wrench. And surprisingly, the tripod stand is a lot bigger than I had imagined. So when you flip everything out, it's a pretty big tripod. But it will serve a very nice purpose that I will talk about later on. Let's set that aside. Here is the gimbal itself. The bottom part is made of rubber and plastic, and then the top part is made of aluminum. It's very hefty. It's not that light, and it's because of the aluminum structure and also the battery inside the handle. I'm told it contains a 2500 milliamp battery that should last for about 9 hours of shooting. Alright, let's take out this gimbal. It will take a while because it is very snug in there. And there we have it. The handle is quite small. It's only, about 4 or 5 inches long, so not a lot to hold on to. We got the joystick here, the mode button and the power button, and we got some record buttons here, time-lapse button, those work with GoPro, and the trigger on the back. And the charging port, which I'm kind of disappointed it's not covered by some kind of silicone. So now you have to tape it up if you're going to take this out in the rain. So let's clean this up. That's just from rubbing against the plastic encasing there. And here it is. We have an arm that is adjustable, so you can fit bigger cameras. But for your GoPros and your DJI Osmo Actions, you don't need to adjust that. And underneath this thing here we have a protective case. This will prevent scratches, but it won't really protect the gimbal from falls. It's not padded or anything. Alright, let's take a look at the arm here. You can see the bolt there that you can unscrew, and then you can adjust the length of the arm in case your action camera is bigger than a GoPro. So I'll just loosen it up just a bit, and then you should be able to extend the arm about a few centimeters, or about 1 centimeter, I think. Alright, so I'm just going to tighten this up for my action camera to work. And then down here we have 2 bolts that you can adjust the arm to go kind of inward. So they say it should work with a variety of cameras, but you got to be careful that the cage, fits into this gimbal. Like this Yi camera here, that cage just won't fit. So it's disappointing that I can't test out this Yi camera, which has no image stabilization built in. Alright, so we will try to fit this in there. This is the Osmo Action by DJI. And one reason why you would use a gimbal is that certain modes cannot use the Rocksteady electronic image stabilization built in, like this 4:3 aspect ratio mode, which gives you the widest angle. So that is where this gimbal will come in very handy, and we will see later on in a sample image or sample footage that I took. So other modes, you can have Rocksteady up to 60 frames per second, even at 4K. So that's fine, and 2.7K is fine. But you have, the luxury of turning off Rocksteady and then just using the gimbal. And you should do that because if you have double image stabilization, they can counteract each other. And whenever you have Rocksteady off, it's going to give you a wider angle. So turn that off to give you a wider angle. Or if you go above 60 frames per second, Rocksteady will turn off automatically because it does not work there. So this will be very useful for taking slow motion videos. Alright, so let's mount this onto the gimbal. The best way is to set it on the table and just stand your action camera upright 90 degrees. And make sure everything is matched up nicely, like the holes here. It may take a while to align the holes. It's very snug because it's made of aluminum, so there's really no flex. After a while of lining the holes, I finally got it to work. Now just screw this in tight so that the camera does not move around so much. You can also use the smaller bolt if you don't want to use your hand to screw this in. So now that it's lined up, we can turn it on and check out the gimbal itself. Alright, let's take a look at the buttons here. We have a mode button, power button, a joystick, some side buttons for recording and taking time lapses, a trigger on the back, and the charging port. Alright, to turn it on, we hold down the power button for half a second. You can see it initializes. It's in the first mode, and whenever it is kind of off to the side or just not nicely angled, just double tap on the trigger and it will go back to the initial position. Alright, so the first mode will lock this axis here and also this axis. It will follow you when you turn left and right, but if you move the camera up and down, it will shoot straight, so that axis is locked. and this is the most important axis to lock to prevent vibration. Second mode will follow you left and right and up and down, so you can tilt your camera up and down in this mode. But this axis is to lock so your camera will stay leveled horizontally. The last mode is going to make the gimbal follow every movement. So even if you twist this way, it's going to follow you. So this is like the follow mode, the full follow mode. And the last mode, the FL mode, I can't seem to get it to go there. So maybe there's some secret settings to get the camera there. Or maybe it's not even a mode. Gotta read the instruction later on. Alright. So switching between the three modes easily with that mode button. And let's turn the camera on and check out a case when you do need a gimbal like this. And it is to shoot in a 1080p 240 frames per second mode. This one does not have image stabilization built in for this mode. So let's move our hands around and also the camera around, just like that. If you were walking, your camera usually shakes left and right like that. But because of the axis being locked, your camera is always horizontally leveled. So let's check out the clip. And another nice thing about a gimbal is that when you're moving left and right, it will evenly move it for you, so you're not going to be jerky as you're moving left and right. The camera or the gimbal itself will slow down your turns and make it more uniform. Alright, as you can see, the video was very smooth. The most important part is this axis being locked, so you get a very leveled footage instead of a footage that's, tilted to the side. Alright, now let's screw on the tripod stand and see if it balances nicely. And it does. And that's because it's a very large tripod. And we need that size because the gimbal itself is very top heavy. And plus the action camera is pretty heavy too, so you do need a very big tripod like this. So now you can set it down and have it take a nice time lapse or a vlog of shooting yourself. Okay, another nice thing about having a tripod this big is that it will extend the length of your handle. So if you're a vlogger shooting yourself, sometimes you want to take in more of the background. You want the camera to be farther away, so you can do it with this tripod, like this. So that's going to give you another 5 or 6 inches, because the handle on the gimbal itself is very short. It's about 5 inches. Okay, so to go back to the original or the initial angle, just double tap on the trigger on the back and you're back to the regular shooting mode. Overall, I think it is a very nice gimbal for your action camera. It is compact, pretty small, and it provides a nice handle for your action cameras. Oftentimes, if you're holding just the action camera in your hand, it feels like you can drop it easily because action cameras are square or cube-like, so it's not very ergonomic. With this, you can hold the action camera and shoot around with ease and without much concern to how you're moving your hands. When you're holding just an action camera, you gotta be real careful with the way you walk or the way you're moving your arms. Alright, next we're gonna test out the camera in a different cage that I bought separately. This is a aluminum cage. It's a bit heavier and the frame itself is a lot taller, and I think that's gonna give the gimbal some trouble. So let's try to fit the prongs in. Even after a few seconds of trying to align the holes, I just couldn't get it to work. You see that? It's just very hard. So I recommend that you just use the included cage for your action camera. And for the Hero 8 and 9, you don't need a cage because it comes with built-in prongs that you can just connect to this gimbal. Alright, but we can still test it because it's very snug down there. I was surprised that the gimbal was able to get this camera up like this. But as you can hear, there's a lot of buzzing going on in the motors. And that's because this camera, or this cage, makes the camera kind of heavier and off balance. So the motors will get damaged eventually, I think, if you keep using it like that, when it's buzzing like that. So I do not recommend a cage this tall. You see how snug that is? That's because the gimbal itself is made of aluminum and there's no room to flex. Alright, so if I take out this piece here and just screw on the included action camera prongs, I think that might work. I forgot to mention that they have a piece of felt here to protect your camera from getting scratched up by the gimbal. So that's a nice touch that they've added. So overall, I think it's a pretty nice gimbal for your action camera. Here's the overview of the whole thing again. It is called a Falcon by INKEE. You can get this at Amazon USA for $119. Alright, from this point on, I'm going to show you footages taken using this gimbal. This is sample footage number 1 taken at the Mitsui Outlet Mall in Iruma, Saitama, Japan. And we are shooting at a mode for which a gimbal would come in really handy. This is shooting at 4K 30 frames per second, and the aspect ratio is 4:3, and this gives you the widest view angle out of all the settings in the camera, the DJI Osmo Action. It's a very nice mode. You can get a lot in the picture, so very good for walkthroughs and also for sports events. But the only bad point is that Rocksteady, the built-in electronic image stabilization, is turned off automatically whenever you turn it into this mode. So as you can see, it's quite shaky. I'm trying to walk very carefully, but I just couldn't get rid of all the vibration. So now I'm going to switch over to when I put on the gimbal, and you'll see a big difference. Alright, we're shooting on the same video settings as before, 4K 30 frames per second, aspect ratio of 4:3 with the widest view angle. But as you can see, the image is very stable, and the best part is that you don't have to worry about the way you're walking or the way you're moving your arms, because the gimbal will stabilize everything for you. It's locking a few axes. In this case, I'm in the first mode, so it locks the horizontal axis and I think the vertical axis. It will follow me if I'm turning, but otherwise the camera will stay locked in. So the image is leveled all the time, and even if I move the camera up and down, or the gimbal up and down, the camera will stay shooting forward. So very nice for this kind of video. Alright, let's put them side by side, and you can see the difference even clearer. So obviously, the top image is not stabilized by a gimbal. I was walking very carefully, and still it was shooting a very shaky video. Whereas on the bottom, you can see it's smooth. I was walking freely without even thinking about my movements. So this is where the gimbal really shines if you want to shoot at this mode that does not support the built-in stabilization. Alright, this is case number 2 when you're running at nighttime. The built-in electronic image stabilization does not work very well at nighttime, This time I'm running with everything turned off, no image stabilization at all. On the next run, I have the built-in Rocksteady electronic image stabilization turned on. As you can see, it's much better than the first run, but you can still see things shaking. And the final run, we have the gimbal on, and as you can see, the image is just superior. No mini vibration at all. So this is a case when the gimbal makes sense. Alright, the last case is walking at nighttime. Here we have everything turned off, no built-in image stabilization, and as you can see, we have big movements. You can look at the street there. Things are going up and down. So with this mode, you have big shakes. Alright, with the built-in Rocksteady image stabilization turned on, it's trying to balance stuff, but at nighttime it has a hard time, so you can see mini vibrations on the road. It's trying, but it cannot focus on the image because it's too dark. So here is when a gimbal will fix everything. Look at the road on the right. There are no mini vibrations, no big vibrations, and things are looking very smooth. Alright, my final thought on this INKEE Falcon 3-axis gimbal stabilizer for action cameras is that it is very useful in certain situations. If your main thing is shooting at nighttime and you use an action camera, then a gimbal makes a lot of sense. It's going to make your video a lot smoother because digital or electronic image stabilization is not good at nighttime on any camera, on the GoPro or on the DJI Osmo Action. And also, if you shoot a lot of slow motion videos, this gimbal will help you. And in the daytime, most action cameras have very decent stabilization. Usually you don't need a gimbal. But if you want your image to be leveled horizontally, and your camera doesn't have that feature, only the GoPro 9 has that feature, then a gimbal makes sense. If you want your videos to stay at a certain angle, a gimbal will give you the best result. For $119, I think it's worth the purchase if that's the kind of video you shoot all the time. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this review and my explanation. I hope it's not too simple or too difficult for you guys. If you liked the video, please thumbs up, subscribe, and tell your friends about my channels, tkviper, tkviper Tech, and my rain channel, Japan Rainwalker tkviper. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next one.